Well, hey, welcome to We Are Unqualified. We are still unqualified and we are still here. The one off episode that was supposed to happen is now a whole thing that's going on. We're just roping more people into this conversation with me. So, everybody, I'd love for you to meet Emma. She is amazing and her accent is much cooler than mine. So,
It's funny, isn't it? Because that's just because it's different. Like, I think, ooh, you're American. That's like fancy. But yeah.
I mean, just the way you say fancy, like it's fancier than how
I know.
I say
Yeah.
fancy. Like,
Okay, I won't try to do your accent.
So, welcome. I'm glad you're hanging out with me. So, if you're hanging out with us here, you're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube, you're on Twitch, you could be on Facebook. I don't know if I'm streaming there. Things are happening. We can't see you unless you comment. So jump in, say hey, leave some comments, join in the conversation, and we can find you there. Otherwise, you're just lurking in the background, which is fine, but not as much fun. So, Emma, introduce yourself. Tell us about you. What's up?
Hello.
How'd you end up here on this conversation with me?
I don't know. I don't know how I'm And the reason I was laughing when you played that really cool, fancy intro was because I then realised you could see me, but I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I just like went and hid? And when you came back, because we were chatting and we were talking, I was like, would that be funny if I just hid and you came back, there was an empty chair? And I was like, I don't know if I could, I don't know if that's funny or not. Yeah, that was what
I you giggling in the background and be like, empty chair with giggles.
Imagine if I ran away. Anyway, so your question was, introduce myself, was it?
Yes.
Hello. I'm Emma. Yeah, you said, why am I here? I don't know. Because I was thinking this. I think it's because I was going to say occasionally in life, but actually it doesn't have to be occasionally. It can be as often as you make it, I think. But you meet someone where you just kind of seem to be on the same wavelength. Like, it's not necessarily because on paper you've done the same things, although actually some of the things we have done might be quite similar. Yeah. But I don't feel necessarily that it's that. It's not that I know that much about you and what you've done. So it's not a case of like, well, we've both done this and we've both done that and we both worked in this place. And it's not that. It's just that I think we met through LinkedIn and maybe Instagram.
I think so, yeah.
Sure. But it was just a case of like going, hold on, this person seems to be like saying things that I seem to be.
We use the same words.
And it was that kind of thing. And so we just had a chat. I think then one of us said, do you want to have a chat? Because I do that sometimes. I think that's a good way to find out if you're on the same wavelength.
Yes.
If not, they'll go, no, why do I want to talk to you, you weirdo? And
right.
Okay. And then we eventually did chat because we couldn't work out we thought we'd both set up. We thought the other person had set up the Zooms. We both sat on Zoom for a while, didn't we? And we didn't connect.
That's right.
And then we did. And then we did. And then a few weeks ago, you said, do you want to come and do one of these episodes? And I said, yeah, why not? And then I thought, and I just said to you, I was like, should I know what we're talking about? I kind of do. But and then I thought, well, no, because that's it, isn't it? We're just going to turn up and have a chat. So I don't know that quite answers the question. It's a long and winding road to how we got here, but we're here.
Yeah, here we are. That's how we landed here. We were like, we should do things, and then we talked, and we used the same words, and now here we are. And then we were talking about
different accents.
Yes,
same words, they don't sound like the
same words, different accents, which is always fun. So, what are you doing now? Like, tell us introduce us to you professionally.
Okay, professionally. Okay. Like, what does that mean?
Not too professional, because then you won't be able to hang out here. But like, what is your career?
Like, okay, yeah. So, in a nutshell, I came from teaching, primary teaching. I mean, is that what you call it in America? What do you call primary school teaching?
Elementary.
Okay, we're going to have to do like in the moment translations as well. So
right, yeah.
I came from primary teaching and left a few years ago and have now retrained as a coach, mindset coach and NLP practitioner, and have realised that I wanted to be self-employed. And I don't know how that happened, but I kind of realised I didn't want to be employed. So I think I'm going to have to do it on my own. So I then went self-employed. And I now kind of do all different strands of that. So some of that is working still in education. So I work with teachers, and I love doing that because I think that would have made such a difference for me if I'd had some kind of coaching or just that space to process when I was teaching. So I work with teachers and school leaders. I also then have started working with students, which I love, because there's like, that's what, it's all the best bits of teaching for me, coaching.
Oh, for sure.
It's the bits that for me lit me up. For me, it was never about the subject or the knowledge for some people it is, and for some people in teaching there'll be lots of, we're all individuals, people have different reasons, won't they? For me, it was about those conversations with young people where they were being empowered to like go and think for themselves and achieve their potential in that. And that's what coaching is. So now if I can do that with students, like that's amazing. So I do it with teachers, I do it with students. I've worked with teachers who want to do similar to me, like leave teaching and go into coaching. I've been working with them. I've been working with people that have burnt out from teaching. So that's what happened to me. I've been working recently with primary school children about working on their mindset through outdoor adventures, because that's all the other stuff I love. So
I love that.
Scouts and camping and being outside and like all of these things that I used to just call myself like I'm a teacher, and I was in this box of like that's how I saw myself. And I definitely had all of those skills as a teacher, but I didn't see that. I just saw like I'm a teacher. That was like my teacher label that I wore. And now I that's why I find it hard to introduce myself, and that's why I'm still talking, because I don't have a label anymore. I don't have I'm a such and such. My way of describing myself now is I do all these things. I don't want to be able to answer your question in one sentence, because then I feel like I've put myself in a box again. So that's why it takes a long time to answer that question.
No, I know. I can totally relate to that, because and that has all the bits and pieces that I want to kind of dig into this with you. Is I identified the same way when I was a director, when I was an early educator, and then I was a director, right? I did all the pieces of coaching that I love doing now, but they very neatly fit under this like label that other people understood. And like similar to you, I kind of took all the pieces that I liked and left all the pieces that weren't my favorite. And pretty much the same as you. I was never about like content mastery, those academic curriculum pieces. I was more about like psychological safety, mentoring, mindset, right? Taking on challenges, growth mindset, et cetera, et cetera. So those were all my favorite pieces that I was doing inside of, especially being a director when I worked with adults in my team. And then when I was teaching, and I took those pieces and kind of translated them. But I've had very much the same issue. And the two issues that I want to jump in with you in this conversation was, one, I kept having a conversation of, I'm not qualified. This is how we ended up here. I'm not qualified to do this. I am just an educator, or I'm just a teacher. I've done these things, but I'm not a coach. I can't do these things. My degree is child development and, and all of that. And I actually had a conversation with someone, bringing it to them, because I was almost ashamed that I wanted to really go into coaching and working on these things specifically. And so I went to someone like on the lowdown and was like, hey, psst, like I kind of want to do this, but I don't want to say it out loud because that's not what I do. That's not my name. And they had to kind of bring me back in and say, are these the things that you did? Yes. Well, that's coaching. So that was kind of one side. And then the other side was, now labels are really hard. It's easy to say I'm an educator, I'm a director, I'm administration. People understand that. But when you say, often I find that they don't kind of roll in, that educators work on mindset and emotional regulation and, all of those types of things as a part of our daily practice, even though we do, but it's not really a focus. And so, getting from one plane to the other. So the post that we did to introduce this was, teachers aren't qualified to do anything other than teaching. Because that's a big mindset. And even for like who I am and what I do and what I believe, I was still there going, there's no way I can say that I want to do this.
So many teachers I talk to are there as well. And so it's not, I don't think we've felt the same thing, but also we're not unique in feeling that actually that is, and I'm thinking, and I know the idea of this is that we get to the answer, but my question is like, why is that? Like, why is it that teachers think that? And is that is that across the board? And I know that's where our experience comes from, so we can't answer for other people, we can only really answer for ourselves. But why is that so
Mm-hmm.
many teachers I meet, and presumably you meet, and we are examples, do feel like we're just a teacher? The words you use, I wrote down, were like, I'm just a teacher. Like, where's
Mm-hmm.
this just coming from?
Right.
Because what, and is that all professions think that? So is that society has said that, you know, you get a profession and then that's what you do, and so you are just that thing, so you are just and now, you know, I could reel off however many other professions. But that also leads me into the second thing I was going to say, which you said about this label of teachers. Because if I say I'm just and I reel off other professions that I know, they're
Mm-hmm.
all these kind of like what I call like route one jobs. Like, teaching is a route one job. And all I mean by that is that if you asked a child, can you give me 10 jobs? They're going to say teacher,
Right.
doctor,
Yeah,
firefighter,
yeah.
you know, vet. They're going to say these kind of jobs. And that's what I mean by
Mm-hmm.
route one. I don't mean anything other than like they're the first ones we think of. And
Yeah.
so that kind of links, because I think that when you say to someone, I'm a teacher, they immediately think they know what that means, because
Right.
they will relate their own experience to it, and they'll go,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I know teachers, whether they were in school, you know, 40 years ago, or they've just
Right.
in school now, or they know a
Yeah.
teacher, or they are a teacher. But even you saying to me I'm a teacher, and me going, oh yeah, I know what you mean, like I know what that is, we probably have such different experiences because we've done it in such different ways. But yeah, it's
Right.
one of those jobs that everyone thinks they know, so there's no like, do you know do you know what I mean? There's
I
no
think
like,
absolutely. Like, I think those types of blanket statements, we use them because they're easy, right? It doesn't require a lot of backstory or whatever, you know, depending on how much of that conversation you want to have. It can be pretty easy to say, I'm a teacher. I think it's very similar to I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a parent,
yeah,
right? I'm a stay-at-home mom
yeah,
specifically. We take that and we think of the actions that are associated with that, like the tangible things, the tactical things they're doing. I change diapers, I make meals, I, you know, get them to bed, I do these. And the same for the teacher. I plan curriculum, I give them their art supplies, I help them line up in line, you know, I give them grades. But what we're
yeah,
missing is all of like the holistic pieces that fit into
yeah,
that. Because if you want a child to complete an assignment, you have to create an emotional safe space. You might have to
yeah,
help them overcome that they forgot their homework at home and now they're frustrated. So you're walking them through that. So I think what we do is we recognize all of the tangible things that teachers and maybe parents or maybe other professions as well do, but we kind of push aside all of like the psychology based or, you know, more human based pieces that get you to that point, because this would be like a grade or, you know, changing a diaper or whatever. Those would be an outcome, but what did it take to get to that point? And I think as you're talking about these route one jobs, a firefighter, for example, could be the same way, because their outcome could be that they saved a child from a burning building, but in the process they had to find that child, let that child know they were safe, convince that child to come with them. Like, there's so many
mm,
other layers down into
yeah,
that we just kind of cast
yeah.
aside. And I think
And I
that's a
think that,
big piece that we're missing.
yeah, because totally, like, when you simplify something, you know, there's lots of reasons to simplify things, and I'm all for like keeping it simple a lot of the time,
Right.
like let's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
But when you do simplify things, potentially, you know, people are missing out on understanding all that other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
if, you know, if we just say I'm a teacher, and then people go, oh, I know what that means, yeah, and
Right.
they think they know what it means because their last experience of being talking to a teacher was when they were in school themselves a long time ago, you know, they're going to have their perception of teaching, and that could be positive, it could be negative, it could be anywhere in between, because
Mm-hmm.
we know that people have such different experiences of education. So as soon as you say I'm a teacher, if we're sort of simplifying it to that, you know, you've then got all this room for like assumptions and
Mm-hmm.
generalizations and missing bits of knowledge, because people don't really know what that is. Just as, like you say, if you say I'm a firefighter, like I immediately think of someone putting out a fire. Like that is
Right, right.
probably a very small, important, but very small part of their
Mhm.
job. I don't know. I'm not a firefighter. Someone can,
Right.
if there's firefighters watching, let us
If
know.
you're a firefighter, let
But
us know.
it's not to, and it's again, it's like it's oversimplifying it, but it's because it's all we know. We know about
Mhm.
police. You watch like crime dramas and you think, oh, I know what it's like to be a police,
Yeah, yeah.
in the police now. Like I don't know what it's like at all. And there's so many jobs that we kind of think we know because they're jobs, like because they're public facing. I think
Mhm.
especially teaching, because everyone's been to school. I think
Right,
there's
right.
this level of like, if you talk about being, even being a firefighter, like not everyone has had a direct experience with a firefighter,
Yeah.
maybe, or we don't know what those things are. But teaching is one of those things that everyone has got a perception of because they've been to school, so they've had
Right.
and they've had multiple teachers, and so
Mhm.
then they will kind of bring their own like perception of that, like I say, whether it's positive or negative, and then but then that's other people. So why is that then stopping us from why are we then saying things like, oh, I'm just a teacher? Like, is that because we've simplified it? I say we, but teachers have
Right.
simplified it so much in our minds that it's become like a 2D profession. Do you know what I
It
mean?
could
Like,
be. I mean, I
this
was
is what a
thinking
teacher
through
does.
like, yeah, like as you're talking. So, say you were having, when I was in early education and then in primary and early elementary, we would have like community helper, right? And we would discuss all the pieces of the community
Mm.
and how they relate and what that looks like. And in order to represent it, you're taking these jobs, police officer, firefighter, teacher, whatever, and you have to very simply represent what they do. So if you have a
Yeah.
picture of a teacher, you have a woman, most likely, standing in front
Yes.
of a chalkboard with an apple and a cute little hairdo,
Yes. I was
whatever,
going to
like
say the
that's your
Apple thing.
teacher.
Like, yeah, because if you Google, well, I don't know if you Google it, but if you like put into like probably Google Images. I'm going to do it
Yeah.
literally right now. I'm going to go Google Images
I was
and
just gonna do
type
that
in
and we can share my
teacher
screen.
and just, okay, yeah, you can do that and actually show people because I don't know what will come up. Um, but yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, it's been updated. There's now someone with a face mask on. So they even now,
Right, right.
perpetuating it now in 2020, 2021. Like, it's still a person stood at the front of the classroom with a blackboard pointing at A, B, C, D, and like, that's simplifying it, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
saying this is what teaching is.
There you go. This
Yeah.
is my Google image of a teacher. What did we totally called it? Blackboard, 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 apple, woman. I see
Yeah.
I see no men represented here.
I've got one man on. Oh no,
So
I've got two men
where?
on mine. So I
Where?
have got some men on the first page. As I go down, there are some more men.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so I mean, this is what we're kind of seeing here. And then if I go into like clip art for teachers, here we go.
yeah, it's like
Right?
going to be
So I think
apples, ABC, 1, 2, 3, and of course
right.
that's simplifying it, isn't it?
Yeah, and so I wonder if, as we are trying to simplify kind of what we do to better communicate that to others, are we also simplifying ourselves and our
Mm.
role in that to then communicate that to others? Because if we say, well, we work on emotional regulation and, creating psychologically safe environment and helping a child understand their sense of belonging so that they can have a foundation for learning, like no one wants to hear that. And if they may not understand what we're saying, like then do we feel like we're separating ourselves from them as far as relatability when it's so much easier to just say, oh, I'm a teacher, I do curriculum, lesson planning, whatever. Like, are we simplifying ourselves to better relate? Why are we
Yeah.
simplifying ourselves?
But see, interestingly, I think, and I would bet as well, knowing what I know from what you've told me about how you taught and how you kind of saw things in education. But I would be willing to bet that if you asked any one of our pupils or students, like, what does your teacher do? They wouldn't say, oh, they stand in front of the classroom with an apple and teach us how to write ABC. Like, they would
Yeah, yeah.
say, oh, like, they help us. They might say they help us learn, but they'd also say things like, we have fun together. Like, I trust them. Like, I can talk to
Mm-hmm.
them. Like, they believe in me. Like, they'd say all that other stuff that we now
Yeah.
a call in coaching, but actually was just
Right.
part of our teaching, because it's part of just being a human as well, I
Yeah.
think.
I think
So I don't
that's
think the kids
so
would simplify it in that way either. I
right.
think they would see us as so much more than those 2D images. I think kids would say, my teacher is someone who, well, I hope they would say this, someone that supports
Yeah.
me, and someone that champions me, and someone that believes in me, and someone that questions me, and someone that makes me think about stuff, and someone who um, you know supports me when I find things hard. All those things, like, they wouldn't just say, they stand in front of the classroom and tell us stuff, or I hope they wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how interesting of a concept is that, right? So, if we were to, so say I had this question of, am I qualified to be a coach? Right? In the ways that you just described it, how are we encouraging you, empowering you, asking you clarifying questions, helping you understand what you want to do, why you want to do it, challenging your beliefs, those types of things that we do inside of education. That is coaching. If you pull that out of the content that you're teaching, we are
Yeah.
doing coaches, teacher, coach, same thing. If I were to ask an adult, hey, I'm a teacher, am I qualified, or what do I do? And then the adult answers, you prepare lesson plans, you manage the classroom, and they kind of list off those simple things. And then your follow-up question would be, do you think I'm qualified to be a coach? They'd be like, I mean, I don't know if preparing lesson plans and all that really correlate. Say I take that same question to a student, maybe one of my students, and say, hey, I'm a teacher, what does that mean? And they may say those types of things like, hey, we laugh and play together. You ask me hard questions.
Yeah.
You help me understand how I'm feeling. Those types of things. They're describing a coach. And then you respond and say, hey, a coach looks like me doing these things. Do you think I'm qualified to be a coach? Would their answer be yes, because they have a better understanding? Like,
Yeah.
if I wonder how that conversation would go if you get two very different answers based on those understandings, because that is what a coach is.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because we're talking about being qualified. Like,
Right.
I did a coaching qualification, right? And when I left teaching, I left feeling, by the end I was totally burnt out, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that came with that. So I was then, I think emotionally, I was like, I'm done with that. I don't want anything to
Yeah.
do with teaching ever again. So when I then started training as a coach and working towards a coaching qualification, I'd like shut all my teaching stuff in a box and like
Yeah.
shoved it under the metaphorical bed and gone, I don't
Yeah.
want to look at that ever again.
Right.
And I was training as a coach, and then I kept having these moments of like, well, I mean, I would do that, because
Yeah.
of course I
I
would
know how
do
to
that.
do that.
No, I've done this before. And it wasn't
Yes.
even like it was, I don't really know how to explain it, because it wasn't like a, well, I know this kind of voice. It wasn't like
Right.
a,
Right.
I know this already. It was like a, hold on, I know
Yeah.
this. Like, I know some of this stuff. And I was like,
You're
maybe
connecting
I
these
could like,
dots
get
for
this
me.
box back out, and I could start going like,
Yeah.
actually, that's quite a useful skill, Emma, that you've just decided
Mm-hmm.
that because you were done with the system as it was, the education
Right.
system, and you were done on your journey at that time. I think I then did that thing of just like shutting it off and going, well, I never want to talk about anything teaching ever again.
Oh, for
I
sure.
don't want to talk to
Yeah.
a teacher ever again. Like, I'm done. And I shoved it all away. And there were these moments in my coach training, because maybe I am glad I did my coach qualification, because
Yeah.
I am glad I did that. But maybe part of me doing it was because I didn't think I was qualified. Like you're saying, there was
Right.
like,
Right.
I'm starting again from scratch. I'm starting from zero.
Mm-hmm.
And I then
Mm-hmm.
had these moments of like, maybe I'm not starting from zero. Like, maybe
Yeah.
I already do these things, and maybe these things come really naturally to me. And maybe what I'm being taught now maybe is just second nature to me. It's like, how to ask open questions, and you go,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, that's just what I do, or how to,
Mm-hmm.
like, even some of the more kind of nuanced like things that you could do to help people get to an answer. I was like, well, yeah, like I did
Right.
that
Right.
like 5 years ago with a
Yeah.
6-year-old. Like, I could probably
Yeah.
do that now in a different way with it,
Right.
that kind of thing. But yeah, maybe it's like you said, maybe it's because I didn't feel like I was qualified, because I did go, well, I'm just a teacher. Now I'm not a teacher. So I boxed it up and pushed it away and went,
Mm-hmm.
well, now I'm not a teacher. And interestingly, on the label thing, for a long time, I say a long time, but definitely for the few months when I first left teaching, my answer to that question of what do you do was I'm not a teacher, which I do
Right.
realise for people that didn't know me at all was a really weird answer, because they'd be like, oh,
Right.
how,
Yeah.
who
We're
are
like,
you?
okay.
What do you do? And I go, well, I'm not a teacher.
I'm also
And
not
go,
a
okay, I
firefighter.
didn't
I'm
ask
not a
that.
doctor.
Yeah, I would like go in with I'm not a teacher, because I
Right.
didn't know how else. I literally didn't know how else to answer that question. I was like, well, if I'm not that anymore, that's all I've got. That's my new label, is
Yeah.
not a teacher. I didn't have the confidence to say I'm anything other than that. It was just like, I am a teacher. And then I knew I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. And I didn't want to be defined by being a teacher. So I then, weirdly started confining myself by calling myself not a teacher. But then,
Right.
because I didn't have the confidence to see that I had all those other things, that actually being a teacher is so much more, but I put it in this box, and I think that's what so many people do.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. We put ourselves in that little clip art, the thing we just Googled. We look just like that.
Yeah.
When, and I experienced some of the same things even before I went to coaching. What I do now and what I did initially when I first left directing was do like strategy and consulting for education related businesses, right? So I go in with leadership teams and help facilitate conversations and take on new projects and, those types of things, right?
Mm.
I was using the same skills in, a boardroom with a leadership team that I was using either in a classroom or with my team that I was leading, my team of educators when I was directing, right? I'm facilitating a space for a safe conversation. I'm pushing, to take risks and to ask questions and ask open-ended questions and those types of things. I mean, it was kind of that same, not through getting a coaching certification, but through like transitioning some of my career. I started having those same kind of aha moments, like, oh,
Yeah.
but I know how to do that. Like, I know this, like,
Yeah.
I know this, and kind of pushing forward and testing and agreeing or testing and trying something and it didn't work. Well, that's cool. Let's try something else. And all those pieces that I was doing that I really loved when I was leading my team. My most recent team that I was leading when I was directing was 75 teachers. And we walked through like creating psychological safety and what does growth mindset look like and how can we do all of these different pieces that create a safe relationship space for learners to then do. So we were focusing on emotional safety first, and then everything else can be built on top of that. And there's so many skills that go into creating that space that I think part of it is they're hard to quantify or say back, like, this is what I do. So we simplify, or maybe we don't even recognize that we're doing it, because I've been doing trainings every Friday for the past couple of weeks on creating a trauma-informed space or psychological safety with educators. And I'll go in and say, do you know what a trauma-informed space looks like? Have you ever heard this term? And they're like, no, I have no idea what that means. I don't know what that looks like. Do you think you have this type of space in your school? No, I don't think so. Never heard of that. And then I walk through what that means to have psychological safety or trauma-informed space. And then I say, do you feel like you have this environment? Like, oh yeah, like we absolutely do all those things. So I wonder if it's just no one's ever come to us and said, these are the skills that you have. Look at you doing these things.
But that's the thing with labels, isn't it? Like, everyone's bringing so you have a word, whatever that word is. So we might the word teacher, but whatever the word is, everyone's bringing their understanding to that word. And so we're all like talking about it like we all understand what it means, but we all think it means different things, like, and that's a concept that I actually work on with my coaching, in that. So one of my coaching programs is called Choosing Confidence, and it's around this idea that, like, confidence is one of those words that is, and I'm doing this because it's a label, and it's like,
yeah, for sure.
Everyone thinks they know what that means, but if you actually interviewed 2 people, 10 people, 100 people, you're going to get all different answers of what confidence looks like and feels like. And so when we're all like striving for this thing, like, we might not want the same as someone else. So you might think, and also because of that label, quite often it's given to us. Like, I don't know if you've ever had it, that someone has said to you, you're not confident, because I know people who have grown up as siblings being told you're not the confident one. So they've grown up believing that they're not the confident one because, their sister's the confident one, as if you can only have one, but that's well-meaningly probably their parents have said, oh no, your sister's the confident one, you're the whatever one. And so they've gone, well, I'm not confident, so therefore I can't do these things that somehow you can only do when you're confident. Or maybe you've had it the other way, like you've been told that you are confident, Like, I've literally been pushed into a party before by a friend, you know, at the time, friend,
right.
who was like, oh, well, yeah, you go in first. Like, it sort of like pushed me into a room full of people I don't know, because somehow she believed that I was more confident, therefore I could deal with that. And
Yeah.
you think, well,
Yeah.
I don't really want to, I'm being labeled by other people, because this
Mm-hmm.
word means different things to different people. But what I say
Right.
in my coaching program is, you need to know what it means for you, because otherwise you're just chasing this thing that,
Mm-hmm.
what if you don't want to get up on stage and talk to hundreds of people? Like, if that's not what confidence means to you, but that's what quite often people think confidence means, public speaking.
Oh,
It doesn't.
right. Right.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
No.
mean that at all. But that's what some people
No.
think it means. And they're like, oh, because I don't want to do that, therefore I'm not confident. Therefore I can't do. What does it
Yeah, for
mean to
sure.
you? You know, it's
And
that, isn't it? It's like, and like you said with
yeah.
your training, people didn't think they had that thing because they'd never heard the word before. But
Right.
equally, you could have gone in with a big buzzword that everyone in education knows and said, I'm going to use one, and it might be controversial, I don't know, but say, you know, do you think you teach growth mindset well in this school? And lots of
Right.
teachers would say, yes, we teach growth mindset. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
look, we've got displays. Yes, look, we've
Yes.
got
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
like, because they don't know what that is. I was one
Right.
of those. Like, I was teaching it, and I did understand it quite well, but now I'm like, have done everything I've done since teaching. I'm like,
Right.
oh, I wasn't really like modeling that, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's that, like,
It's
you've got to
really
be really
true.
clear on what these things mean to people, and know that
Right.
you're all aiming for the same thing, or either aiming for the same thing if that's what you want, or actually choosing, if it doesn't affect anyone else, just aim for what it means to you. Like, what does confidence
Mm-hmm.
mean to you? What does qualified mean to you? What, you know,
Right.
all these things, like,
Yeah,
what
and
does it
that's
mean to
where
you?
this conversation started, was what does it even mean to be
Mm,
qualified? Because my
yeah.
statement was I'm not qualified to do that. And then the conversation became, what does that mean? What would it look like to you if you were
Mm,
qualified? And then I really had to
exactly.
start asking myself that question, and that's how we came here, was
Mm,
labeling qualified versus unqualified. And actually, this comment, I'm going to throw this up here. So he had said a second ago, where was it?
yes.
Can classification or simplification be a limiting belief? And I was like, absolutely, 100%. And then he says, I've always been struggling with labels. Sometimes being one thing means looking like something else. Being confident might mean being to shut up when someone else is talking. And I just posted
Yes.
about this right before we started, about what it means to be empowered.
Mm,
And kind of walking in, your own power, walking in empowerment, or living an empowered life, right? That can be kind of one of those buzzwords, that
yeah.
you throw around and everybody's like, I don't know what that means, or I totally do that, or I don't. And similar to anything else, there's a spectrum, right? A spectrum of empowerment, and it can fluctuate depending on the day or the moment.
Yeah.
But what I want to respond to with this is I just posted about empowered, and my statement was, sometimes empowerment looks like a panic attack. Because yesterday I had a panic attack, and I messaged a friend of mine and was like, I'm having a panic attack, right? And they had to help me walk me back through that. But that was me functioning in an empowered way, because one,
Mm,
I owned that I was having an anxiety response. I reached
yeah.
out to someone instead of pretending like nothing was going on, right? I was facing something that was really challenging that I wouldn't have faced before, and allowing myself to feel the fear and all those things, but not backing down. And so while it sounds like a weakness, I was actually functioning in an
Yeah.
empowered way. And I
Yeah.
think that's a very big piece of all of this, is while some things may not sound like the other, and it's not necessarily clarifying what other people view
Yes.
empowerment to be, but rather, what do I view empowerment to be, and how have I broken that
Exactly.
down for myself?
Exactly. And so that's exactly it. And so that comment there about, sometimes confidence is knowing when to stop, when to stop
Mhm.
talking, when to stay quiet, when to walk away, all of those things, like, is exactly that. But if we just go along with this idea, and it might not be everyone's idea, but a lot of people, when I've worked with them on this, talk about, what is confidence, and they're like, oh well, it would be, and they kind of list all these things, and I go, do you want those things? And they're like, no,
Yeah.
I don't actually want to do those things. You
Yeah, I
realize
don't
that, like,
understand any of
they
that.
kind of thought I was meant to be more confident, I was meant to be
Right.
louder, I was meant to be more,
Mm-hmm.
meant to be talking more about it, and actually they realize that, like, oh, I don't actually need to strive for that thing, because actually I'm confident in
Right.
myself, and staying quiet. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
confidence comes from that, like, so often, that when you're really confident, it's not about shouting about how confident you are, or
Oh, yeah.
or how good you are. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
being confident in yourself and like trusting that you've got it and you can handle it. And but it really takes like to define those things. But again, that probably comes from teaching for me, because that is a major first point of teaching, is like make sure
Right.
you actually know what you're talking
Oh
about.
yeah, right.
Like
Yeah, dig into that.
if we're
Right.
aiming for something, let's actually understand what that is and what does success look like, and
Mm-hmm.
how we're going to get there, and how we're going to know we've got there, and how we're going to know that we've achieved the success. But
Right. What are your markers for that?
I'm saying yeah, don't do that in life. So maybe actually being
Mm-hmm.
a teacher has then meant that I then do that much more, like sort of know to then do it in coaching and in
Oh,
my
for
life.
sure.
But
You
other
know, I
people
find
might go
myself,
through life not questioning that.
yeah, I mean, I find myself doing that as well. Like when I'm working with a client and they're saying, you know, I help them. It's really digging into that conversation or that statement. It's right. You're making
Yeah,
this statement. You're putting this label on your actions. Why are you labeling your action that way? Well, because I did it this. Well, do you feel like that action actually? What does that label mean? Well, the label means this. Okay. Well, now that you've clarified that, does that action still match that label? Well, no. You know, and so it's really digging
yeah,
into those statements that we just make without even thinking,
yeah,
and breaking them apart and then figuring out, does that actually mean that? And so I think I've heard, like, I like what you said about confidence. While we in our heads might see that as someone being coming in and, you know, commanding the room and doing this and doing that, when
mm,
really confidence could be walking into the room. You could, just
yeah,
because you're there is showing confidence, right? And a lot of
yeah,
times when I was first really recognizing that I had anxiety, and sometimes that was an anxiety attack or panic attack or whatever, people were saying, well, one day you'll get over that. And then you'll never have anxiety attacks before. Or when you get better, you'll never have this. Or, you know, when you really understand this, you'll never do that. And I think for me, it was not being empowered means never having an anxiety attack, but being empowered means understanding what that means, allowing myself to still feel those things, and then pushing forward and like my mindset around it. And so it was two very different
yes,
things. And I've heard it said, you know, there's a thing around like people who are really wealthy are not the people that you'll see driving up in the really expensive car with the really expensive Gucci and all the things, because they're comfortable in
yeah,
what they have and, you know, those things, and they don't need to show up and kind of show out. But the people who, you know, fake rich will show up in the really expensive cars with the really
yeah,
expensive things and all the, you know, and that's an interesting contrast, is when you really are walking in confidence, or when you really are feel internally qualified, or whatever that word is for you. It's no longer about proving that to someone else. It's because you understand what it is and you align with that internally. And so much of these conversations that I've had about being qualified versus unqualified have all kind of come back to this middle point of it's about how we understand and identify with ourselves instead of external perceptions.
totally, because this is the whole thing. If you don't question these things, you know, if you just kind of chase something without actually checking that you want it, that's
Right.
when you
Yeah.
end up like going, to be successful I need to do X, Y, and Z, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is. And that might be like what society tells you, or what your parents tell you, or what your friends tell you, or just stuff you didn't even question. You might just think, well, what I have to do, you know, the traditional thing is like, what I need to do is go to school, I need to do well in my exams. I'm doing going to do these a lot because I do well in my exams. I need to get a good job. I need to do that good job. I need to like have a you know, stable career, good career. I need to do that. I need to get married. I need to have children. I need to retire, and then I need to die, and then I'm done. And you think, is that really like what you want to do? And if you want to do that, like that is absolutely fine. There's no judgment on any of those things. You know, doing a career for life, I'm not doing that now, but when I went into teaching, I probably thought I was going to do that. But I don't think I'd ever question that I wouldn't, you know, that I would do different. I went to school, I went to university, I became a teacher, I did that, and then I thought, hold on. It was only like a few years ago I thought, hold on, is this what I want to do? Like I was sort of on this like normal route, if you like. And I'm saying normal because what does that mean, you know, but like
Yeah. It's another one of
societal
those words
normal.
that we don't understand.
You know, but it is a lot of society says that this is how we should do things. And so I'm just urging people to check in with those things. So before you
Mm-hmm.
go to get a good job, like actually define
Right.
what good means to you. Like
Yeah.
if good to you means earning a certain salary, great. Like
Right.
why do you want that salary? What is that going to do for you? Because the salary in itself doesn't. do anything. It's what it then can get for you, but that's fine. But if good for you is actually like being able to spend time with your children, every weekend, then that's what defines a good job. Or if a good job for you is somewhere where you get to show up and really feel like you can be yourself every day with a team of people that accept you for being yourself, like that's your good job. And the thing is, we use these words so often. I mean, I presume it's kind of worldwide, but that's interesting because it might mean different things. But it's definitely used a lot in the UK, like get a good job, get good grades, get a good career, a good salary. Like, what does good mean? Because good is going to mean different things for different people. For some people, a good salary is like being able to have a job, where they can, a good salary means different things to different people, doesn't it? Like you were just saying, it might just be enough to like feed your children versus like own 5 cars, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
These different things. So when everyone's going, oh yeah, it's good money, because I don't know if you've ever had those conversations with people. They say it's good money, and then people don't talk about money a lot, which is why this happens. I've actually got people to talk about it, and their idea of a good salary is like, way off. Like one person's down here, one person's up here. Because we don't actually know what good is. We just band about these words about let's get a good salary or let's get a good job, or when we're confident, and all these words that don't mean anything.
Right. Yeah, they're like filler words, I think. And, and that's interesting because this idea of labeling is something that I use in every area of my conversations, right? So if I'm talking with early education teachers about psychological safety and behaviors and those types of things, my first statement is always remove the label. The same thing as if I'm talking with a client or with a leadership team or whatever, my same statement is the same. My statement is the same. Remove the label, because they'll come to me and say, like in an education space, they'll say the bad behavior, or I want them to be a good student. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Well, first I say remove the label, because it's not good nor bad. It's just behavior. It's not good behavior, bad behavior. It's just behavior. It's not good experience, bad experience. It's just an experience. Yeah. And if you are labeling it going into it, then you're already framing your response. And that's, definitely. I have this thing that says your label denotes your response. Like if you're already labeling it as something, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to respond organically. You're kind of, you're
prejudging
your response.
You're assuming, you're going in, this is a bad
and and that messes with your ability to really respond well, I guess, or from a really clear space, like an unbiased approach, right? So we use that in behavior and in classroom. And then in the same thing, when I'm working with strategy with owners or co-founders, when they say, we had a good month, okay, or we had a bad month, remove that label. What does that mean? What did you do to classify that as bad? Well, we only made this much, in profit. Okay, well, what was your goal? Well, our goal was this. Well, then you actually made more than your goal. Maybe you need to shift your goal, right? So it's really, forget the labels. Like if you are going to label, make sure it's very clear and you understand it. But really my push is always drop the label. And if you're going to say, I'm looking for a good job, shift that with, I'm looking for a job that allows me to be home on weekends, pays me, X number of dollars a year, and is in the education industry. That is such a better label than good. Yeah.
I'm smiling because I get to use my favorite phrase now, which is we get to choose. We get to choose what the labels are, like what the definitions are. Like we get to choose what these things mean. So like when you're saying, people are saying, oh, I did really well or we did really badly, like you get to choose how you see it, because the facts are the same, right? So the fact might be, just sometimes having numbers is helpful to see something, but it doesn't have to be about numbers. But say, someone was aiming to make, I don't know, £10,000 and they made £9,000, like they get to choose how they label that. They get to choose like, oh, well, I failed and it was rubbish and I did badly because they didn't make the, that extra £1,000, right? Because they didn't achieve their target. So, but if the month before they hadn't made any money and now they've made £9,000, like they get to choose if that is an amazing achievement or not. And
Yeah.
again, that's like, and I've used like money because sometimes the numbers are helpful, but I sometimes use scales with my clients and say, you know, where are you now on a scale of a 10 is where you want to be. That's what you're working with me on. You know, you want to be here, whatever that looks like, whether that's a really kind of specific goal or a more kind of happy in my life kind of goal. But that's a 10.
Right.
Where are you now? And if there are 2, I say to them, like, you've got a choice now. We can either focus on that 8 of where you know, what you haven't done yet, and we can do that, or we can focus on the 2 that you've already done, because in there,
Yeah.
my sense is that's probably all the clues of what you're doing already that's moving you in the right direction. And it's not, you know, to avoid the gap of the 8, but it's going, well, you've already done this little bit, so let's focus on that and let's pull out all the good bits and let's build it up. But again, you get to choose. If you go, well, I'm a 2, so therefore I'm a failure, so therefore I just stop. Or you go, oh, hold on, I'm a 2. That means I've done some of this work already. That means I can do more. And you get to choose how you view any situation, because the facts are the same. And, you know, 2 people could have the same thing going on, couldn't they? Like you and me could have the same thing happen. And it's how you choose to see something. You know, I posted the other day, one of my things I post about is flipping Friday, which is this idea that we can flip our thoughts. You know, we can flip it and we can go from a negative to a positive. We just get to choose to do that. And it was about the fact that last Friday was Friday the 13th. Yeah. And so many people choose on Friday the 13th to believe that they're going to have a bad day, because that's what society's told us. On Friday the 13th, you have a bad day. So they go around thinking they're going to have a bad day. And then they have a bad day because they make that happen. Because what they then see is, I lost my keys, so therefore it's, you know, whereas if you choose to have a good day, you might lose your keys, but you might have spent 5 minutes looking, you wouldn't even notice that had happened, you know. Or when you were looking for your keys, you might have found, you know, some money down the back of the sofa, and like you see it's a good thing. So it's just like you get to choose. The facts are the same, but it's what you were saying. If you go in thinking it's a bad thing, you're predetermining. Sorry, a thought's just come to me. It's like if you watch a film without the soundtrack. You know, if you watch like a scary film, you know, like that really tense bit I hate. It's always like the most scary bit, because the actual scary stuff. It's the like someone's walking down a path, and you know, it's all that, and it's like it's the music that they play and it's the sounds. Like if you didn't have that, if you just watched the facts, you're like, oh, like a woman's walking down the street. You know,
it's totally normal.
It's all this other stuff that they've like added to it, and that's our narrative, isn't it? That's what we're bringing.
It's the anticipatory anxiety, right? The anticipation of it. You're creating your own anticipation, right? So if you're walking into it and saying, I'm excited. And I was reading one of my favorite people, Samuel something, Holston, I think his last name. He does brain science. He was on here on What Could Go Wrong with Me a while back, but he was saying that anxiety and excitement are the same responses in our brain, right? So it's really just about changing the transcript. Instead of saying, I'm anxious about this, saying, I'm excited about this. It's the same response in your brain, but you are shifting that. The way that you're labeling it is changing the response that you're going to have, because you're preconceiving like what's going to happen. And so like you're saying with the soundtrack to the horror movie, you know, you get to choose what that looks like going into it. And I think when I'm working with like clients and they say, you know, I want to have a good week, then we walk that backwards. What does that mean to have a good week? And they'll be like, well, I want to, you know, make this phone call by the end of the week. Maybe it's a hard thing they need to take on. Okay. All right. So then that's a concept for a success. That's one of our action steps we have for this week. So what does success look like? Does success mean that you just make the call and that's success? Does success mean that they answer the call? Does success mean that you leave a message? Like, what is that? So here's the action step. And then success marker, you know, number 1 would be that I make the call and I leave a message. Secondary success could be that they answer the call, right? And so then next week when we come back and they say, then there's a frame of reference. We can no longer say I had, you know, a bad week if they walked through those success points. Well, did you make the call? Yes. Did you achieve primary or secondary success? Yes. Okay. Well, then based on our conversation last week, we'd had a good week. We're going to label it. It's so much about clarifying those things.
Exactly. It's that if we don't just question these things and like, I'm going to use my favorite sentence again, but you get to choose, what it means to you. So it's fine if success for you is about is about money, and for someone else it isn't. Like, that's absolutely fine,
Right.
as long as you've chosen that. Like, as long as you've
Mm-hmm.
chosen that is what success means to you. Don't like chase it because you think it's what you should do. Because
Right.
one of my clients put it really well. They said, we talked about this idea of like, if you don't define something, it just keeps moving on. So when I talk to people about this, like, I say it's absolutely fine. You don't have to do anything now, because I never tell people to do anything. Like, and occasionally I get people go, well, you just left teaching and you just jumped and you didn't have a plan and you worked it out. Like, I don't feel ready to do that. I'm never going to tell anyone that's the best thing to do. It's what I did.
Right.
It's not right for everyone. But what I'd say is, don't get caught in this trap of like, in that example, like, I'll leave when I feel ready. Because what does that mean? Or like, I leave when I have enough money. What does that mean? I leave when I have enough experience. What the heck does that mean? If you say like, I'll leave when I have X amount of money in the bank, it's absolutely fine. Like, you've got a plan, you've got a strategy that you can make it happen. If you go, I'll leave when I have I've taught this class, or I've done this qualification, or whatever, if that's what's important to you. Or I'll leave when the ready thing is never going to happen. Like, we're never ready to do stuff. And so the danger is, what happens is people then just like stay and it keeps going. And my client said, it's like if you have a beach ball in the swimming pool and you're trying to like reach it, and it's like spinning away from you and you can never quite get it. He's like, it's that. Like, and that's what I say about confidence as well. Like, if you wait for confidence, you'll never do the thing. If you go, well, I'll do that thing when I'm confident, like, you'll never do the thing. And so that's why my program is called Choosing Confidence, because it's this idea that you can just redefine your label. You can just choose what it means to you, and you can just choose to feel it now, and then you can do the thing. But otherwise, like I have an example about TED Talks, right? Like, if everyone waited until they were ready to do a TED Talk, there would be no TED Talk. There wouldn't have been a TED Talk. Like, someone had to do a TED Talk to then go. Oh. And so there's this thing. Like, I know I've gone, well, maybe I'd like to do a TED Talk in the future, but but it's like, well, hold on, let me apply my own logic here. At what point is it just a dream that's in the future? Or if I really want to take that seriously, what am I going to do about it? But if no one did anything until they knew they could do it, nothing would have happened in life. Like, everything comes to failure. And I think that if people then are scared to do it because they might fail, which is another thing that could be reframed, that I don't know what you think, but quite often I think people see failure and success as like opposite. If you did a word association opposites, they'd say success. Like, they're not opposites. They are the same thing. Like, they are, one has to happen for the other. And if you fail, you're being successful in learning. And if you're successful, you have to have failed in something. And again, like, nothing would happen.
And I think,
imagine if you didn't, like, if no one had gone skiing because they might fall over, like, no one would have skied anywhere. Like, imagine all these things.
We have none of that
in the Olympics, like all these sports, like, how many times did those athletes fail and fail and fail?
Oh my gosh.
That,
and I think if we take this whole concept and bring it back to this qualified thing, because we're throwing different words in there: success, confidence, empowerment, right? But it's really all the kind of the same thing. If we could pull that back into what it means to be qualified versus unqualified, it's an internal marker. What does being qualified look like to you? If you were going to, what does success look like? What does qualified look like? Well, qualified looks like for me as a coach, it does not look like me going and getting a coaching certification. But for other coaches like you, it did mean going to get a coaching certification. And that's completely, we are the same level of qualified because we're functioning within our internal structure. We set our markers for success and then we hit those. So it's not about taking on, this is what qualified means. It's about being clear. I am qualified when I do these things. And as long as you're setting them for yourself, then, you're good to go.
And
you're looking for internal markers.
on that note, I did do, I have done qualifications since leaving teaching, but I reframed them again in my own mind, because I realised when I said I realised I had this teacher box that I'd shoved away, and I thought, hold on, I'm not starting again here. I've got all this valuable stuff I can bring. I had linked to that, I had this moment of realisation that what will change, like the day that I'm qualified versus, like, technically I'm now not qualified, when you're working towards my qualification, I was like, and then I'll be qualified. And I thought, but what really changes, apart from the fact I'll now have a piece of paper that says I'm qualified? Like, nothing else changes unless I choose for it to change. So I can choose to believe that I can do more. But again, that qualification thing can be one of those beach ball moments of it just getting further away. I see people go, well, when I've done this qualification, and then when I've done this qualification, then I'll put myself out there. And it just means they'll never put themselves out there. They'll never get clients. They'll never really kind of set up their business or do what they want to do, because they'll get caught in this trap of, like, when I'm qualified, then, when I'm confident, then, when I'm ready, then, and it will never happen.
There's a never-ending sea of internet qualifications. Like, you could get courses, you could get certificates and degrees for the rest of your life. And unless you set that line, unless you clearly set that marker for success, you could be pursuing qualification forever and never hit it, because it's how you identify qualification for yourself.
So I did reframe it that I wanted to do this qualification because I think at that point I was still stuck in this teacher box. And I think it was a good moment for me to prove to myself and actually prove to others. But whenever we're trying to prove anything to others, we're really trying to prove it to ourselves. When we say people might think, what we really mean is, like, I think that's what I think about myself. People might think that I'm not qualified. That means we don't think we're qualified. So I started doing the qualification, which I'm really glad I did. But I think I did it because, like, I'm not a teacher anymore, so I need to be something else. And then I saw how, hold on, I'm this, like, beautiful mesh of all these things that no one else can be exactly like I am, because I've brought all my experience to this. And I reframed it to go, I'm going to have the qualification, but that is about what it means to me. None of my clients have ever asked to see my bit of paper that says I'm qualified. I mean, none of them, some of them, like, don't even know that I have it. They probably don't even know the piece of paper exists, because they don't know what coaching is. They just know I can help them. So, like, that piece of paper didn't change anything unless I chose for it to change something. And I chose to believe that, like, I suppose it was about me, reframing myself almost from teaching. But I didn't have to do it down that route. I could have done it down loads of different routes. And it's just about, again, always just checking in with what it means to you. Because if you're chasing the piece of paper because you think the piece of paper is somehow going to give you the confidence to do, like, it's not. It's only going to do that if you choose for it to. If you choose to, once I've got this piece of paper, then I'm going to go and stand on stage, or then I'm going to go and put myself out on LinkedIn and say I can help people for clients, or then I'm going to go and knock on. Only if you choose. If you just wait, the piece of paper will arrive on your doorstep and nothing else will change unless you choose for it to change. And
if you set it as a marker for success for yourself, then absolutely. Like, get as many pieces of paper as you need to be where you want to be. But don't depend on that on its own. It has to be conjoined with, here's what my marker for success looks like. And that's so important. So I love that we kind of were able to bring that whole thing, back to this one piece. It's magical how that worked out.
As if we knew.
As if we planned it. So, like, tell people hanging out here or on the replay, where can they find you? What you got going on? Like, give us the lowdown.
Yeah, okay. So probably people are seeing this through LinkedIn somehow, but not necessarily, because, like you say, we're streaming it everywhere. So LinkedIn is a good place to find me. That is my name there, Emma Cann. Most places I'm Emma Cann Coach. So on Instagram at Emma Cann Coach, on Facebook at Emma Cann Coach, on Twitter at Emma Cann Coach. On LinkedIn, if you put at Emma Cann Coach, it will get to me somehow. But you can find me through Chelsea's page. And that's where you can find me. And then I suppose it might also be good to tell people, if they like this kind of idea of what I'm saying, like about choosing stuff, like that is kind of my thing. And even then I'm like, is it my thing or because I don't want, like, but I'm choosing it to be my thing, so it's okay.
Right,
It's not
right,
it's
yeah.
not a label. It's not a label. It's okay, guys. I've chosen for it. It's okay. Like, about choosing and the fact that we get to choose. So
Yeah.
that is kind of what I talk about a lot in lots of different ways. So yeah, if you come and find me in those places. And then my Facebook group is called Choice Club, and it's all around that idea. It's like, it's a group, it's so lovely. It's just a group of people that are, you know, focusing on and celebrating making choices that feel good to them, in whatever that means to them. Like, there's no right or wrong, like we've just talked about. So if anyone's kind of resonating with that and going, oh yeah, I like this idea that I get to choose, like, that's what I'm about. So if you want to come and find me there, that's Choice Club on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out. This was an amazing conversation. Next week, I go live. We're doing the unqualified thing again. I go live Thursday on What Could Go Wrong. We're talking about inclusive playgrounds and those types of things. So if you're in the education space, hang out with me there. But then next week, I'm going live for We Unqualified. And I believe my guest next week is Travis Lochner. So if you hang out with him, that's what's happening next week. So we have some things happening going on, but go follow Emma in all the different places and, you know, make those choices and do those things. But thanks for hanging out for the conversation. And Emma, thanks for having this conversation with me. It was great.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. It's called
Angela
Choice
is
Club.
asking.
It's called Choice Club. But what I will do is, because I can see the comments, but I can't do the multi-screen thing like Chelsea. I'm just sat here talking into here. So what I will do is I'll come on LinkedIn, because I want to read through these comments that I haven't really been able to see. So people might get some pings of me answering your questions or giving my thoughts on those as well. So yeah, I will come onto the LinkedIn post and find people. But yeah, lovely to hang out with you. And lovely to hang out with all these people that I see popping up, but I haven't really been able to interact with fully. But, you know, hopefully our questions and our conversation has, you know, we had no idea where it was going to go. The fact that it came back together beautifully again as a metaphor for life. Just keep showing up as you, seeing where it goes, and it all kind of comes together somehow. So there you go.
Yeah, for sure. And then if you go to my website, my coloring pages are there. So if you feel like you need a coloring page that talks about jumping off a cliff or that everything's fine or what could go wrong, you can go to my site, which is Ruin Your Life. Wait, what is my website? RuinYourLifeCoaching.com. I'm going to type it in.
I don't know, but I want some coloring pages.
It's new. So go hang out there. You can download coloring pages. They're free. It's fun. I have them and I do them in my downtime. So do that. Join the Facebook group. Download coloring pages. These are your tasks for today. And then go get qualified, whatever that means to you. We will see you guys next week.